When Ottoman scouts entered the clearing, they found something worse than an army waiting for them. This was not only violence, it was a message designed to break courage before battle began. The man behind that message was Vlad, a ruler who understood that fear could travel faster than soldiers. To his enemies, Vlad became proof that a small kingdom could still terrify an empire. Inside Wallachia, nobles quickly learned that Vlad's court was not a place for careless loyalty. His war was not always fought in daylight, because surprise was one of his most dangerous weapons. Long before his name became legend, the forests of Wallachia were already becoming part of his terror. But Vlad's story began in a frontier land, trapped between stronger powers and constant danger. As a child, he grew up watching power shift hands through betrayal, violence, and political fear. Even young, Vlad looked like someone learning not to trust the world around him. His father, Vlad Dracul, ruled in a world where every alliance could become a trap. Then Vlad and his brother were sent away as hostages, caught inside the politics of survival. In the Ottoman world, young Vlad saw the strength and discipline of the empire he would later resist. He was not simply a guest there. He was a political guarantee held under pressure. What Vlad saw in captivity hardened him, teaching him how rulers used discipline, punishment, and fear. By the time he grew older, captivity had not broken him. It had made him colder. Vlad belonged to Wallachia, but the Ottoman court had shaped the enemy he would become. Then, news of family tragedy and political violence showed him how quickly power could be stolen. He returned to the world as a displaced claimant, carrying anger, memory, and ambition with him. From that moment, Vlad was no longer just surviving. He was preparing to take power back. His return to Wallachia was not a hero's welcome, but a dangerous gamble for the throne. The capital was filled with rivals, suspicion, and nobles who had survived by changing sides. When Vlad entered the princely hall, every man there understood that old rules might soon end. As ruler, he was young, but his face already carried the hardness of captivity and revenge. Vlad knew the boyars were dangerous because nobles had helped turn Wallachia into a battlefield. So he began turning fear into government, making betrayal feel more dangerous than obedience. His punishments were meant to remove enemies, but also to warn everyone who was still watching. Under Vlad, Wallachia became harsher, more disciplined, and less forgiving than before. For ordinary people, his rule could feel like protection and terror standing side by side. By this point, Vlad had become more than a prince. He had become a warning. Inside his fortress, Vlad understood that Wallachia could not survive by strength alone. Roads were guarded, patrols increased, and the kingdom began to feel watched from every direction. His soldiers did not just serve a ruler, they served a system built on obedience. When guards arrived at noble homes, everyone understood that Vlad's patience with betrayal had ended. Justice in Vlad's Wallachia was not gentle because he believed fear created order. Public punishment became part of his power, showing people exactly what disobedience could cost. The famous Golden Cup story survived because it captured the strange fear of his rule. People could travel more safely, but that safety came from knowing punishment was never far away. Vlad seemed to believe that mercy had failed Wallachia, so terror would have to replace it. In his court, even silence felt dangerous because no one knew who he suspected next. Then Ottoman envoys arrived, bringing demands from the empire that expected Wallachia to obey. But Vlad did not look like a man ready to bow before imperial pressure. The meeting became a clash of pride, custom, and defiance before open war began. When the envoys left disturbed, both sides understood that diplomacy was giving way to danger. Vlad chose resistance, knowing the enemy was stronger, richer, and far larger than his kingdom. Wallachia prepared for war, but this would not be a normal fight between equal armies. Vlad rode with a smaller force, relying on speed, rain, and fear instead of numbers. His raids struck the border suddenly, making the Ottoman frontier feel unsafe and predictable. After each attack, smoke and confusion carried the message that Vlad would not submit quietly. When his riders returned at dawn, the war had already changed into something more personal. Ottoman leaders now understood that Vlad was not just refusing tribute, he was attacking authority. Every raid made him look more dangerous, but it also brought the empire closer to revenge. Vlad began destroying supplies because he wanted the enemy to enter a starving land. Empty villages became part of the battlefield, turning Wallachia itself into a weapon. Ottoman soldiers marched forward, but the deeper they went, the less the land gave them. From the forest, Vlad watched and waited, choosing when fear would strike next. Ambushes came suddenly, hitting columns before disappearing back into trees and darkness. The Ottomans could defeat armies, but Vlad was forcing them to fight shadow. Every movement was planned to make the larger army feel surrounded, uncertain, and exhausted. By now, Vlad had turned fear from a reputation into a battlefield strategy. Then the empire came in force, sending an army meant to crush Wallachia completely. The Ottoman ruler brought overwhelming power, expecting Vlad's resistance to finally collapse. From the forest ridge, Vlad saw the size of the enemy and understood the danger clearly. He answered with scorched earth, removing food, shelter, and comfort from the invaders' path. The Ottoman army marched deeper, but every empty village made the campaign feel more cursed. Vlad's riders moved quietly through the forest, preparing to hurt an empire without facing it directly. Supply lines were attacked because Vlad knew hunger could weaken soldiers before battle ever did. The campaign became frustrating for the Ottomans, with damage appearing everywhere and victory nowhere. Vlad's plan was simple and brutal. Make the enemy afraid of every road, tree, and shadow. Wallachia had become a trap, and the Ottoman army was already walking deeper inside it. Before the most famous attack of his life, Vlad knew surprise was his only chance against overwhelming force. His men prepared in silence because every rider understood they were about to strike the heart of an empire. Through the forest, darkness, Vlad led them forward like a blade, moving toward a sleeping giant. The Ottoman camp looked endless at night. Then Vlad's riders exploded into the camp, turning darkness into confusion before the Ottomans could organize. The attack was not meant to destroy the whole army. It was meant to make every soldier feel unsafe. In that chaos, Vlad became the kind of enemy commanders feared most. Ottoman officers tried to restore order, but fear had already entered the camp faster than any command could stop it. Just as suddenly as they appeared, Vlad's riders vanished back into the forest, leaving panic behind them. By dawn, the Ottoman army was still standing, but its confidence had been badly wounded. Vlad had won a dangerous moment, but he knew one night attack could not end the invasion. The Ottomans continued forward, but every road now felt like it was hiding another trap. So Vlad prepared the image that would make his name feared for centuries after his death. Before the army reached it, even the scouts seemed shaken. When Ottoman soldiers entered the forest, they did not find a battlefield, they found a warning. The forest of the Impaler was designed to do what an army could not: stop courage itself. Even hardened commanders understood the message. Vlad was willing to become terrifying enough to survive. For the Ottoman ruler, the sight was not just horror, it was proof that Wallachia would not break normally. At that moment, Vlad's greatest victory was psychological. The Ottomans did not need to be destroyed in one battle for Vlad's strategy to hurt them deeply. From the forest, Vlad watched the effect of his terror, knowing he had shaken a force much larger than his own. His soldiers saw what numbers could not always defeat. Inside the Ottoman camp, commanders now had to ask whether victory was worth the nightmare ahead. But Vlad's greatest danger was not only outside Wallachia, it was also inside his own political world. A rival backed by Ottoman power gave frightened nobles a safer path than staying loyal to Vlad. For the first time, Vlad had to face the truth that fear could control people, but not always keep them loyal. His army was tired, his land was strained, and constant survival had begun to cost more than victory returned. He still rode like a dangerous ruler, but now the circle around him was smaller than before. Vlad had terrified an empire, but he was being squeezed by enemies, rivals, and betrayal at the same time. Seeking support from Hungary was not a sign of weakness. It was a final attempt to keep his cause alive. They also saw a dangerous and unpredictable prince. Instead of receiving the alliance he needed, Vlad was pulled into another trap of politics.
terrific. The man who had made armies afraid was now trapped behind stone walls, waiting while history moved without him. Years passed in captivity, and every season outside the window reminded him that power can disappear quietly. While Vlad was gone, Wallachia changed again, proving how fragile rule could be. He gathered support once more, but this time the road back to power was narrower and more dangerous. His final return to Wallachia was not the beginning of a new empire. It was the last gamble. People watched him come back with uncertainty because Vlad's name meant both protection and fear. He briefly reclaimed authority, but the room around him no longer felt like a secure throne. Enemies were already gathering again. When he prepared for his final campaign, he must have known this fight was different from the others.
The road ahead felt colder, emptier, and more final than the campaigns that had built his legend. In the last battle, the chaos that had once helped Vlad now closed around him. Separated in the fighting, he faced the kind of end that often waits for rulers who live by war. When the battle was over, the feared Prince of Wallachia was gone, but the fear around his name remained. For his enemies, confirmation of his death brought relief, but also caution. His throne was empty, and the silence left behind showed how quickly terror can lose its master. Wallachia now had to decide what Vlad had truly been. After his death, new rulers entered the court, but stability did not return as easily as fear disappeared. Ordinary people heard the news with mixed feelings because Vlad's rule had punished and protected them at the same time. The roads he once guarded grew quieter. Ottoman influence moved back into the region, showing that Vlad's terror had delayed power. That is why his story is difficult. The same man who terrified enemies also claimed to defend his land. In quiet, religious spaces and old walls, the question remained, what survives when a feared ruler dies? Those who served him remembered more than cruelty. They remembered a leader who made stronger enemies hesitate. But foreign storytellers carried darker versions of Vlad's life, turning his punishments into unforgettable legend. Over time, Vlad became less like a political ruler and more like a shadow staring out of history. The forest of the impaled became the image people remembered because it captured the terror of his strategy. Long after his death, travelers and storytellers still treated his land like a place haunted by warning. Around fires and inside courts, people repeated his story because fear is one of history's strongest memories. A small frontier prince had forced a mighty empire to pause, proving that terror could sometimes balance numbers. The forests of Wallachia kept his legend alive, as if every dark road still remembered his riders. His halls emptied, his rule ended, and the power he built faded back into silence. Yet Vlad remains hard to judge, because history remembers both the monster his enemies described and the defender his land needed. His kingdom did not become a great empire, but his legend became larger than the borders he ruled. Vlad rose from a brutal frontier, terrified an empire, died in violence, and left behind a story fear refused to bury.